Hello mates, thanks for clicking on this video. Welcome to 2021. Glad to see that so far it's exactly the same as 2020. Things have felt pretty much the same ever since March of last year, which is when I uploaded that first PS Now 2020 game list video, just as we were first going into lockdown, probably thinking this would be a pretty rough couple of months. If you've been with me since that first video, thank you. It may seem like I haven't even left this room, which isn't that far from the truth. But in that time, a lot has changed with PS Now. It still boasts the biggest game library of all the subscriptions, 850 games, just about, for £8.99 per month. So for over 800 games, that is pretty huge value, but only if the games are any good. For those that don't know, PS Now uses a limited time access window for its bigger games. So big games on the service are usually only on there for 3 to 6, maybe 9 months. So before I dive into the list, a moment's silence for all those games we lost in 2020. All right, let's look at let's take a look at the PS Now 2021 game list. Just before we jump into the long list, I do want to point out that this next section is lengthier than I anticipated, but I didn't want to cut it down too much because this is a definitive list and every game I'm about to mention I do recommend and I did have some thoughts on. So rather than cut it out, I'm just pre-warning you that it's quite comprehensive, so maybe you want to turn me on to 1.25 speed for the next part. I've also broken down the video into the genres that I'm about to cover, so you can attack it, bit by bit if you haven't got another 20 minutes, 25 minutes to spare, or, just whack me on 1.5 speed, let me cook. That's probably the best way to listen to my voice, because I always take these, kind of annoying pauses in between words as I try and process things in my brain. That time I was doing it intentionally, but as you'll see during the video, it is kind of true. Anyway, so here is the PlayStation Now library, and here is me. Hello. I'm doing this on the PC app because it makes navigation a little bit easier for me, but anything you see here is also available on PS Now for console, PS4 or PS5. The only difference is the PC app, you can only stream games, you can't download anything. PS4 and PS2 games you can download to your console, but PS3 games you still have to stream, which is a bit of a shame because quite a lot of this library are PS3 games. But yeah, basically what I'm going to do is just run through the highlights for me. There are, like I said, there are 800 games on here, so I can't talk about each one. So if I breeze over one, it's because I either haven't played it yet or I'm pretty indifferent about the whole thing. But we'll run through these kind of baked in genres that PlayStation Now has, and then we'll leave my list to the end. So recently added, Dead Cells is one I've been meaning to play for a while. It's a platformer similar to Ori and the Blind Forest, or Will of the Wisps and Hollow Knight, and those two are the reason I haven't gotten around to Dead Cells yet, because I've been playing those. But that's definitely on my list to play. Now it's actually on my list. Frostpunk is a base management sim that has a survival twist where you have to kind of keep the wheels turning and the city operating in these sub-zero temperatures. And the BioShock games have actually been on here for quite a while, but they recently made them the remastered versions, which is pretty cool. And even though there are so many games on here that I haven't played and I've been meaning to play, I still always just come back to BioShock because it's just one of my favorite games. So it doesn't matter that I've played the remastered version and the original version too many times. Anytime I see this on PlayStation Now, I'm like, just a little bit, And these two are pretty good too. Horizon Zero Dawn is one that was initially one of those timed access windows. So I think it came on the service back in February 2020. And was on there for 3 or 6 months and then came off, so I didn't finish it. But now it seems to be, it's back on there, and I imagine that means it's back on here for good, hopefully, so I'll be able to finish that, which is great. Wreckfest is a racing game with more of a demolition derby aspect. Maybe like, I haven't played it yet, but I imagine like the older Burnout games. But I've heard good things about that, so that's definitely one worth checking out. Injustice 2 is a decent fighting game, but I would say for me on PC, I wouldn't go for this just because it's streaming, which for games like Horizon Zero Dawn, I think the streaming, well, for the most part, the streaming is really good. So in a single player RPG like Horizon Zero Dawn, you wouldn't really notice it, but in a fighting game and a driving game to a lesser extent. But when you need kind of time-based inputs, and your timing is a big part of it, then I wouldn't recommend streaming. Obviously, if you're on console, you can download either of these, so that doesn't matter. And Friday the 13th, I played a bit of. It's pretty good. I really like Dead by Daylight, and it's pretty similar to that, where one person plays as the killer, Jason, and the others play as survivors, and you have to kind of work together to escape, and Jason obviously tries to kill them all. City Skylines is a building simulator, kind of like the Sim Cities, very similar actually, really good, quite complex. It's not like you couldn't just play it casually, but if you're into simulators, then definitely worth your time, but you've probably already heard of it. There's not a lot going on in this one, to be honest. I don't know why Wreckfest or Hello Neighbor are in the family friendly. This is a horror game, so but its art style kind of hides the fact that it's a horror game, and it's also not a very good horror game, but Farming Simulator is decent. Abzu is, what would you call this? It's kind of a walking simulator, but it's underwater, so swimming simulator, I guess, but very therapeutic, very relaxing, and really good. Only about 2-hour runtime, 2-3 hours, so if you want just an evening to like kick back and chill, I would definitely recommend Abzu, or Limbo, which is a little bit darker in tone, but same kind of thing, and it has more of a platform angle, where this is more of an interactive story. You don't have to really do anything in that game, if that makes sense. But Limbo has a bit of platforming, but again, is kind of almost an interactive story. That's probably not fair, because there is more platforming, but and there's actually very little story. It's kind of all mysterious, ambiguous background storytelling, but definitely worth playing. Both of these are definite highlights. And Journey is kind of a mixture of both of those, and definitely the best game, maybe on this entire service. I think Journey may be my favorite game on here. It's PlayStation 3, so you do have to stream it, but that doesn't matter. I'm trying to think of words to do this justice, but if you haven't played Journey, please play it. Let's put it that way. It's like the most therapeutic game I've ever played. It has an absolutely fantastic soundtrack. It looks gorgeous, and it's really emotional. So those three things, if you can tick those boxes, I'm in. Soma is a horror game more along the lines of BioShock. It's actually quite similar, set in an underwater dystopian city, I guess, where things have gone very wrong, and you have to kind of hide from these weird mechanical machines. And there's a big twist on that. So the machines are, I'm not going to spoil anything, and I don't really have time to anyway. But let's say this is a human, this is a machine. It's kind of in there somewhere. That's a terrible way to explain the game, but that's all we got time for. This is actually probably one of the best genres for games that you might not have heard of, but are really worth checking out. The Unfinished Swan. Tell you what, I've done a review on this already. Done a review on this already. So I'll link those like right now, to save me some time. Also included this. Hitman 2 is a relatively recent addition, and I played through all this. I do really like the Hitman games, and 2 is very much the same as the initial reboot, but kind of just improves on it in all the ways you would hope. So bigger settings, more people, more extravagant and interesting ways to kill people, so that's always good. The wrestling games, not gonna play, and even if I did, I wouldn't really be choosing to play 2K19, I don't think, as that's an annual release. Mafia 3 is almost really good, but the open world has nothing in it. that's probably... Oh, Bloodborne, here we go. So this is definitely a big highlight. The Souls genre probably doesn't need any introduction, but if you want a third-person kind of hack-and-slash action-adventure that's really difficult, I would recommend Bloodborne, maybe even over Dark Souls, but I can't speak too much on it because it is literally too difficult for me, and I just don't have the patience to stick with it. But from what I've played, I really like, and I can understand why it's so popular, but I can't give that much of an in-depth review because I just can't get past like the first 2 hours. They also have WWE 2K18 if you want to go backwards. Dishonored 2, definitely a highlight. Stealth-based first-person sandbox-esque missions. Wasn't huge on the story, but the actual gameplay is some of the best stealth-based kind of, problem solving within the level design that I've come across. And Phantom Pain is arguably the same, but from a third-person viewpoint. The Phantom Pain has a lot more customization and flexibility in how you approach those levels, but this is obviously set in an open world, whereas Dishonored 2 is more linear level-based structure. My camera cut out halfway through explaining that one, which I guess is my fault for rambling too much, but it's really good. It's in one of my review videos anyway, so go play it. Done. Vampire is good if you want like a dialogue-based, dialogue-heavy, it's RPG, it's about vampires. Kind of, you can see my thought process going through what I remember about that game, but it does have a good kind of choice-based branching dialogue in that game, which is worth checking out. Prey is pretty good. Kind of, again, along the Bioshock mold with more so in terms of gameplay than story. Prey does have a very good story in its own right that I won't get into because I don't have time, but go play it. Get Even has a terrible story. Memories Retold, really bad. I've talked about Limbo, but was it in this one? Am I going back on myself? Terraria, pretty good. You can tell that I'm almost down through my second coffee because my words per minute seems to be on the rise. Heavy Rain, pretty funny, but bad. But bad funny. So let's go. Let's move on. Pick up and play, I don't see many highlights in here. I generally, I think these are going to be mostly sports games, or skating. So I wouldn't spend much time here. Pac-Man, can't go wrong with Pac-Man. And Steep is probably the best of this bunch, which is an open world snowboarding game. So if you imagine SSX, but instead of the levels, all of the levels are dotted around a single mountain, which you can go around freely and explore. So that's pretty good. Discover, I imagine I'll have done most of these. Again, Street Fighter is an excellent fighting game, but I wouldn't play it if you're streaming. Saints Row the 4, I really just don't like. If you like it, you can play it. Fallout New Vegas, I like. You've probably played it by this. Jesus Christ, I've had too much coffee. Let's slow it down and talk about Until Dawn, which is probably in my top 3 games on PS Now. One of the best PlayStation 4 exclusives. It's probably these two are your best 2 PlayStation exclusive on here, but let me wait until we get here before I talk about that, which both of these are in. So hold on for a second. Star Wars Force Unleashed, it's okay. Sly Cooper Collection, very good. If you haven't played Sly Cooper, imagine it's an old school 3D platformer, much like Banjo-Kazooie and Spyro. And you're a fox, I think? He's a fox? Yeah, he's a Sly Fox. That is a thief, and you have to go around. So it has a little bit of stealth in there. Obviously, it's pretty rudimentary, but it's good fun. Definitely recommend it. I think the second one is my favorite, if I'm remembering that. But this is the collection, so you get 1, 2, and 3 in there, I think. I'm now going to have to check. 3, yeah. This section right here, this is probably where you're going to want to spend your time until you've developed a good list. But I mean, this is just all hits out, hit after hit, really. Okay, not quite. Not quite. These 3 are some of the best PlayStation exclusives of the last generation and the generation before. So Bloodborne I've spoken about. The Last of Us probably needs no introduction. It doesn't need me to say much about it that hasn't already been said. But obviously it is not the remastered version. It's probably the only negative I can think. And Until Dawn is like I said, this is probably the best PlayStation exclusive on PlayStation Now, but I don't play it because it's too hard and I don't have the energy to keep trying. So this is my favorite PlayStation exclusive on PlayStation Now. If you don't know, it basically plays out like an interactive teen slasher horror film, but it does have a better story than a lot of those films have, and it's all based on choice and consequence, and it's actually more replayable than you might think, because for me at least, a lot of the choices branch so much that you have to go all the way back to kind of see the different outcomes. So I definitely recommend Until Dawn. It's one of my favorite games on here. Another strong category, PlayStation Now has a surprisingly diverse number of Lego games, which is great for me because I love the Lego games. This is probably my favorite. Also Harry Potter Years 1 to 4. I don't know if it has this second. It has all of the Harry Potter ones. It has all of the Batman ones, which I think the first one is probably the best. I haven't played the Lego movie. I'm not going to spend too much time on here because you know what the Lego games are about, and the only thing that changes really are the characters. XCOM 2 is maybe my favorite game on PlayStation Now at the moment. I'm putting so many hours into this. Again, like Bloodborne, this game is like brutally hard and unforgiving, but XCOM 2, I just love it. I can't get enough of it. It's a tactical turn-based strategy game, if you haven't played it before, with a decent amount of base management in there as well. And I've had to restart this game like 3 times, I think, because I basically, it allows you to get so far into the game that you can just be basically set up to fail. And the best way out for me was just to think, I'm going to start again with this learning experience in mind and attack it, from the start and try and get a head start, because you can fall behind in this game like no other game I've played before. And I do all of this on the beginner difficulty because I don't really play turn-based strategy games until XCOM 2. It's probably not the best game to get started with, but I don't know many other TBS games on PlayStation Now. So, and also this is just the best one. So I highly recommend, if you haven't played it before, give it a go. It will like beat you into the ground, but I find it really fun. So The Unfinished Swan, done a video on that, go check it out. Gravity Rush, done videos on that. Uncharted, you know what that's about. Red Dead, you know what that's about. I'm gonna save that because I think there's a PS2 bit, but this is probably the best PS2 game on PS Now, in my opinion. Shooters, I mean, Doom is probably, Bioshock I don't really class as a shooter, but I guess going through these, the Metro series are all on here, they're pretty good, but Doom is definitely the best from here. I mean, I would really avoid all of these until you've played Doom, because in terms of just as a shooter, I think it's head and shoulders above pretty much all of these. The combat in Rage 2 is pretty good, but the rest of the game I didn't really like. Sniper Elite 4 is a very different game, and decent, but I wouldn't really class it as a shooter in the same way. But if you want like the FPS experience, you've got to play Doom. Both the Injustice games are on here. They've got Street Fighters. Yakuza is an RPG more than a beat 'em up. Virtua Fighter 2, if you really want to like throw things back. PS4 games, I imagine and hope at this point that I've talked about all of these. Shadow of the Beast is pretty good. That's a remake of an old arcade game. Really aggressive side scroller. Very gruesome but very fun. PS2 Classics. Here we go. Let's throw it back. Destroy All Humans. Having played it again, like I forgot how just like stupid it was. You kind of anally probe humans and mind control them, but like good throwback. Fantavision is a PS2 game I never played. A fireworks simulator, like that could be a thing, but that's really good. As for the rest, like some of these I'll admit I just haven't played. Some of them haven't aged very well at all, like these Star Wars games are pretty terrible. Ape Escape 2 I always forget this is 2 because it's kind of hidden there, but this is the second Ape Escape. This is definitely a highlight and one I have fond memories of playing on PS2. But like most of these I don't actually remember, and I think it's quite a bad collection of PlayStation 2 games given how good that library was back in the day. And I think the reason for that is these are all actual PlayStation 2 games. So remember I said you can download any of these to your console, but a lot of the PS2 games on PlayStation Now are actually PS3 versions. So Shadow of the Colossus, which I glazed over earlier, isn't in here because it's the PS3 version of Shadow of the Colossus, the PS2 game, which means you can't download it and means you have to stream it, which is kind of annoying. Not the end of the world, because streaming a PS3 game doesn't require as much bandwidth as PS4 games. But just in general, I'm a bit disappointed by the PS2 library, and the PS1 library is basically non-existent, which is a real shame because, I mean, I have loads of fond memories of PS1 games, but you can't get those through PlayStation Now. So just bear that in mind, I guess, if you're thinking of getting PS Now for older titles. Actually, beyond PS3, there isn't a lot here. RPGs, I think I've touched on my favourites, but there are some other good ones on here. Greedfall just doesn't seem like my cup of tea, but I think in terms of a big RPG, is pretty good, and the same for Final Fantasy. I mean, that's a Final Fantasy game, so you know what you're getting with that. And 15 seems like the biggest, grandest version of that to date, so if you're into that kind of thing, then that's obviously good. We can just breeze through racing, RPG, and sports and get into strategy. So I've mentioned Frostpunk. Civilization Revolution is Civilization, which is good. This is the one that's made for consoles, and I think they dumbed down the entire game a little bit too much to make it accessible for consoles, but it's still decent. And if you haven't played the Civ games before, it's definitely worth trying, because it's a good entry point in the series. But they don't have any of the other ones on here, unfortunately. XCOM, Enemy Within, I haven't actually played yet because I got too taken with XCOM 2 to even bother with the first one. So I'm not actually sure how different it is, but I will get round to this at some point. Farming Simulator, not sure how much strategy is involved in farming. Hamster Ball, not sure how much strategy is involved in that. That's a point and click game. I'm not seeing that much strategy in this strategy genre. I guess Tales of Monkey Island is a strategy game. It's just a point and click adventure. I also wouldn't go with these Tales of games because the second Monkey Island is on here, which is like the best one. So like these aren't strategy games. What? Journey and Flow. Flow is good, but it's not a strategy game at all. So not the place to look. If you actually want to play a strategy game, stick with kind of these 4, I guess, because after that, it's just a lie. The God of War gets its own genre. You don't have the latest God of War. It was one of the ones on a timed release. Of these, I'd say God of War 3 Remastered. I haven't played Ascension, and I haven't played these in a long time, so I kind of can't remember, but I would go with God of War 3. And then we're into the long list. So what I'm going to do now is jump back up to my list and see if there's any that I haven't covered, basically any that aren't included in the genre listings, because that's the thing, is like, you don't know, without diving into this list, alphabetized list, you don't know if, you know, they've missed any through these genres, especially when genres like strategy just seem like a random collection of stuff. So let's go into my list. Like I said, Monkey Island 2 Special Edition is excellent if you're into point and click. It's a lot of puzzle solving, more than you would think, and a lot of thinking outside of the box, which, when this was released, was kind of the big thing for PC games. Now, I don't know any more games that have kind of tried to take this on, but if you like kind of out of the box, thinking outside the box, puzzle solving, and with a lot of humor attached to it, Monkey Island 2 is really, really good. I think, to be honest, I've mentioned all of these now. There's the Uncharted is similar to God of War. The latest Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy aren't on here anymore, but the first 3 are. Control is similar to Horizon Zero Dawn, I thought this was coming off the service, and it did come off the service, I think, but they've put it back on as a permanent feature, which is great. And this is actually, I probably haven't spent enough time on this, and it's going to come later in the video, which is doing it a disservice, because it's one of the best action-adventure third-person games on here in terms of story. Got an excellent story that is really muddled and confusing, purposefully so, but control is definitely worth checking out. Hollow Knight I've sunk many hours into, and I'm not even close to finishing. Done a video on that, so go check that out, I guess. Metal Gear Solid HD Collection, they have all the Metal Gear Solid games on here. And like I said, I actually haven't played through all these properly, so this is definitely on my list to play those first few Metal Gear games. I think that's it. Ico, similar to Shadow of the Colossus, actually is a PS2 game, but this version is the PS3 game. So they're kind of hidden, actually. These two are probably some of the best games that you won't see on the top half of the PS Now library. If you haven't played these, definitely go play them. They're like vintage, top tier, cream of the crop PS2, which is saying a lot considering the PS2's library. I think that's it. So thanks for sticking with that if you made it all the way to the end. I think even once that's edited, I certainly rambled for certain bits of that video. So thanks for sticking with it. PS Now has definitely grown a fair bit in the past year. I think the one thing holding it back is that it's kind of competing internally with PS Plus, which also gets new games each month. The difference being, once you get those, you can keep them for good. And a lot of the conversation I see online is people, complaining that this month's slate of PS Plus games is better than the additions to PlayStation Now. So I kind of think Sony would be doing the right thing to combine the two, the same way Xbox combined Xbox Game Pass and Xbox Live. My next PlayStation Now video is taking on a slightly new format, which I'm going to be using going forward, which is what to play, or what I've played on PlayStation Now for this month. So the idea is just to talk about what games have got my attention and to get a bit of a conversation going with you guys, asking what you've been playing, and kind of work with that, because I'd like to know what you guys are playing, take on your recommendations the same way you hopefully are taking on mine. For this month, it's probably looking like XCOM 2, maybe Bioshock Remastered, even though I and probably a lot of other people have already played it. I just can't help myself. I see it and I want to play it. So that's probably going to feature. But also a few games that I've been looking at, maybe the Metal Gear Solid collection, if I can squeeze it in. But like I said, I want to get a conversation going about it. So if there's any games you have been playing, let me know down in the comments. Any games you recommend that you've played, however long ago, doesn't really matter. Please let me know in the comments. And if you convince me, if you sell it well enough, it may well feature in the next video or the future videos coming up. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. That was the PS Now game list for 2021. Hopefully it's looking even bigger and better this time next year. But until then, I'll catch you on the next one. See you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.